How did Caesar save Gaul? Last episode I covered why Caesar abandoned his plan to invade the Balkans and instead focused his intention onto Gaul. Now, with the initial threat for Helvetii migration defeated and returned to the Alps as a vassal of Rome, Caesar needed new justification to continue his activity in Gaul. Luckily for him, that came in an instant. Ariovistus, chieftain of the Suebi and other Germanic tribes, briefly mentioned in the last episode, was the warlord who had helped the Sequani defeat the Aedui. Both allies of Rome, but warring against each other. In return for his help, however, he had demanded 1/3 of the Sequani's lands be handed over to him. The Sequani accepted. What choice did they have? But Ariovistus was still not satisfied, and kept moving more and more members of his German tribe into the region, plundering and kidnapping as they went. Local Gallic chieftains requested an audience with Caesar, where they threw themselves at his feet and begged him to help them to drive the Germans out, pointing out also that these Germans would not stop at the border of Rome, but would continue endlessly into Transalpine Gaul and perhaps even across the Alps, as they had in the past. The Sequani, whose land the Germans had taken from most, were silent, fearing that their anti-German words could make it back to Ariovistus, but secretly gave hints of their support. Caesar agreed to help. Problem was, Ariovistus had been named a friend of Rome by Caesar. A sudden declaration of war would be in violation of that friendship. Caesar sent a diplomat to Ariovistus and requested that the two meet in the middle of their lands, a sign of respect and equality. But Ariovistus asked Caesar to come to him instead, a sign of Germanic domination, if Caesar was to accept. Of course, he refused. Caesar's response was a demand. Ariovistus must not bring any more Germans across the Rhine, but could keep the land he had currently taken. In addition, he must return the hostages taken from the Gauls. A fair deal, but Ariovistus wanted more, and did not like demands being made against him, believing Rome had no reason to be involved here. From my reading of Ariovistus, I would argue that he did not understand Roman culture and Roman geopolitical strategies of influence politics, and seems perhaps genuinely confused at why Rome would care, but of course at the time was seen as a sign of hostile aggression. Ariovistus did refuse, and within an hour of receiving this response, the Aedui reported raids in their territory. The Treveri then reported that the Suebi were massing on the border of the Rhine, preparing to cross, an army of 100,000, larger than that of the Helvetii. This was enough for Caesar to argue the friendship now void, broken by Ariovistus, not by Rome. 3 days later, word came through that they were marching on the Sequani main town, Vesontio. This location was key, high ground, religiously significant to the Gauls, and filled with stored food. If the Germans were to take this town, then that would be a major blow for the Gauls and Caesar. The Romans forced marched themselves tirelessly across Gaul and reached the town first. Not only was this Germanic army larger, but Romans also feared the lesser-known Germanic tribes much more. It was up to Caesar to boost morale. To put it into perspective, how little the Romans knew of the Germans, according to Caesar, the Gauls described the Germans as of huge stature, incredible courage and skill with weapons. Panic was rife in the camp. Men hid, requested permission to leave, wept and often wrote their wills during free time. These were not yet the battle-hardened men Caesar led across the Rubicon, and this is important to note, albeit obvious. Caesar's men were like any other at first, and Caesar's respect was nothing out of the ordinary. This is something that grew over time, developed and was nourished by Caesar. Caesar criticised openly their cowardice and thoughts of betrayal, reinstating discipline, reminded them that Rome had defeated the Germans before, grounding them in the reality that these were just men, like them, and lastly, to those concerned about the supplies, made them look around themselves at the fresh harvest ready for consumption. This worked. Caesar decided also to join his legion in battle, a move that would boost the morale of his troops, but would make command more difficult. The army set off. Ariovistus sent envoys to Caesar as the two armies got close. An offer to meet in the middle, as initially requested, was proposed. They met and talked a while. Caesar proposed the same terms as before, and Ariovistus once again declined, but did offer that he would help Caesar in Caesar's future endeavours if Rome was to retreat. Of course, Caesar could not accept. Trouble brew. The bodyguards of Ariovistus threw their javelins at Caesar's men. The negotiations were broken off. Ariovistus attempted to reopen talks 2 days later. Caesar did not go himself and instead sent envoys who were then captured by the Germans on their way to the negotiations, accused of spying and then were imprisoned. Would this have been the outcome for Caesar if he had gone to those talks? We do not know. Battle was fought and Caesar won, routing the enemy. Many were massacred as they fled. Ariovistus escaped, but disappeared, mostly from the historical records after this point. The Roman envoys were found safe in the camp and were made free. Caesar returned to Transalpine Gaul to conduct the administration of his province during the winter. The army, however, stayed in Sequani territory. This is how Caesar saved Gaul, by defeating the Helvetii, raiding the Aedui, and by forcing out the Suebi, who were stealing territory from the Sequani. But it seemed those two tribes, both allies of Rome, had become more than allies, dependent states, reliant and in debt to Rome, and Caesar stamped his mark on this territory with the leaving behind of his troops, stationed in the region. The tribes were still free and independent on paper, but argument can certainly still be made that the reality of their situation had shifted, and this was now occupation. Next time we will look at the Belgae tribes and the geopolitics that brought them together and against Rome. Remember, I am only a diplomatic geopolitical channel. If you want details on the battles, kings and generals do a fantastic job that I could never compete with, so maybe check them out too. Anyway, hope you enjoyed and learnt something. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe to get notified of the next one. And please share this video with anybody you think may be interested. It really helps me out. But for now, this has been the history of diplomacy.